So we're going to get right into it. Let's see what Nick and Joe are talking about today.
All right, here we are. Blacks, Jews, and whites.
God damn, already. Right into it. I like that. I like that.
Race.
Perfect.
Well, as far as race is concerned, obviously very touchy subject, big subject. I would say that race is real. I would call myself a race realist is where I would start because I think that on the right now, even maybe more than the left, we have come to this consensus that race is not real.
Right.
And the message that's pushed is colorblindness is supposed to be the way that we look at each other and the way that we govern the country. But I think that's a mistake. The reality is that race is a biological phenomenon. It's a genetic phenomenon. And there's this narrative people talk about, or a word that people use, they say that race is skin deep. And when we talk about racial differences or racial disparities or racial politics, people like to say things like, well, why should the color of a person's skin matter? And I think the record of the past 60 years in America with the Civil Rights Act, with the multiracial politics, is that
the Jewish Rights Act.
That we know that for a fact, race is not just skin deep. It's not just different shades of different colors. To the extent that there are different colors, it's a result of a genetic biological difference. And it does reflect other genetic biological differences in appearance, in behavior, in culture, in mindset. And that, I think, is at the center. That question is at the center of politics today as America has become a multiracial nation, is a country with all these different fundamentally people living together. How exactly are we going to get along, and how great are the differences, and what are they?
Right. I've heard some people.
And that's what I was talking to my aunt about. All the time, especially if you ever see a Dr. Umar fucking live, all the time he's like, you need to go to black doctors. I'd be trying to look for black electricians, black plumbers. Like, he always emphasizes on looking for specifically black people to do the job because he wants a black person. He trusts black person more. So when Nick says this, I hate when people get so like, oh my God, because I hear this shit all the time. I'd rather have a black doctor. You niggas say it all the time. So it's like, I don't understand why when a white person says it that you get confused, because you say it all, you motherfuckers say it all the time.
Say, what if it was the contents of character all along? And not to say in a universal sense each and every single individual, but that's what we're always doing when you think of prejudice. It's to prejudge. Prejudice in the negative connotation, I think really is, I think it's immoral. But in the technical sense of like, we're constantly making judgments all day long. And we're also, making prejudgments. And some of those prejudgments can be arbitrary and can be sinful, but then some of them are based off of patterns and statistics and all these things to give us an idea.
I was say it's just pattern recognition that helps you stay alive. I forgot what it's really called, but if you wasn't using that, people just would be dying. Like, you would just be doing dumb shit if you didn't recognize patterns and understand what's going on. Should I walk down this alley? I know it's kind of dark, and I hear really bad things about alleys and shit. Should I really walk down this alley? Like, it's pattern recognition. You don't want to do dumb shit. If you want to do dumb shit's gonna happen to you.
Idea of an expectation of something that's foreign or strange to us. So I don't know, but I'd like to have an idea ahead of time, and so I'm going to rely on past experiences. I'm going to rely on averages, those kinds of things. The favorite verse of every liberal who ultimately hates Christ, but it's like, I don't believe your Bible. The meme, I don't believe your Bible and would never follow it, but perhaps I can use it against you. The favorite verse is Matthew chapter 7, where it says, judge not, and that's all they do. But the first 5 verses are about not judging, but then the immediate following verse, Matthew chapter 7, verse 6, is do not cast your pearls before swine, or give what is holy to dogs. And the irony is...
and that's what I was telling my aunt the other day, because I'm telling her, like, you can't... we're not supposed to, just because we're not supposed to judge people doesn't mean, because Ephesians 5:11 says the same thing. Like, let me go to the verse, because you niggas don't know your Bible, unfortunately, but I am the Baptist one, so we study our Bibles. Abstain from participating in, endorsing, or associating with sinful and unproductive actions. All right, that's what it says. So just because you can't judge somebody doesn't mean you're supposed to support their fucking homosexuality. That's what we was talking about.
So Jesus is commanding us, his disciples, not to give sacred things to those who will not appreciate them, which requires to obey that command and to not, give pearls to swine. You have to make a judgment. So 5 verses about not judging, and then a verse that commands us to do something that holds as a prerequisite making a judgment. So obviously, I think the interpretation is, don't make sinful judgments, but not all judgment is sinful. There's a way of being like judgmentalism versus judgment. What is discernment other than judgment? Like we're called and commanded, expected to be discerning and to make righteous judgments. So then the only question left, so there's good judgment, bad judgment, righteous judgment, sinful judgment. So then the only question left is prejudgment. But when it comes to prejudgment, it's again not inherently sinful to say, I run a business, and I've hired over the course of the last 20 years of running this business, I've hired 100 employees under the age of 25, and 98 of them have stolen from the company. Like if that guy says, like he decides from now on, I'm not going to hire kids. I'm going to hire guys who are older. Like we wouldn't say that that's sinful,
right?
So, but not all 22-year-olds, steal money from the company,
right?
Of course, help! I'm being overwhelmed by ants. Not all ants, so there's a way of doing that without being mean-spirited, without being hateful, and yet still it is technically prejudice, but not in the sinful negative connotation of mean-spirited or unjustifiable universal hatred towards an entire class of people, but it's simply exercising prejudgment. And I think that we can do that, not just race would just be one category, but you can do that in a number of cases. And I think that instinctively, without even realizing it, we already do that.
Right.
And so then to come up with some kind of propaganda that says, so you can do this thing that everybody's instinctively doing all along, but you can't do it in this one category. And that one category
is race.
It actually kind of matters. It kind of matters that you're able to follow your better judgment and I'm not going to go to that side of town at this particular time of day.
Literally what I just said.
In a way, it seems like even a recipe for a liability,
And what's funny is even though my aunt will advocate for that type of blindness, we don't live near none of that niggatry that go on. We don't live none of that goofy shit. All right. We live nice tucked away in the hills type shit. There is no so it's funny when people say that, but they don't, they make sure they get away from them motherfuckers.
I really shouldn't have been on that train.
Right.
They make sure not to live over there.
The grave error is the individualism. That I think the germ of the problem is in individualism, where it says that individualism is the way of grouping people. And it says that...
Whoa. What's that?
I just put the budgeting
app in base 44. Guys.
Society, how is society constructed? Out of what composite? It's constructed out of a composite of individual human beings, the individual, which is sort of like an abstract quality. And it says that an individual, inherent in individualism is that you're grown up because you're rational and can make decisions and have responsibility. But it also says that you're not deeply influenced and connected to other people. And so for me, I think from the point of view of race, we have to depart from individualism, starting with the family. Which is to say that, me, I'm a 27-year-old man, but I wasn't born an adult man. I was born a baby to two parents, to a mother and a father. just like they were born to a mother and a father. And our mothers and fathers imprint on us our habits, our way of speaking, certain characteristics. You know, if you see a tall person, what is one of the first questions you say? If you see a really tall person, oh, your parents must be really tall. A very smart person or musician, oh, who are your parents? And is not race but kind of a collection of people that descend from the same forefathers?
Yeah.
And have these kinds of cultural groupings. Like, and there's something interesting about prejudice, which
all
is
the families, the Bible, there's like all the families of the earth.
right.
Like they're like the nation is an extended family. So like in some sense you can say that races are different families writ large.
Extended families. And yeah, and it only makes common sense because they come from the same place. They're ultimately the races. The white people come from Europe. And within the white people, the Nords come from Northern Europe. The Meds come from Southern Europe. The Slavs come from Eastern Europe. The Asians come from Asia. The black people come from Africa. Even the black people in Haiti, Dominican Republic, they come from Africa. So it is, in a sense, an extended family. And I would say that even as far as prejudice is concerned, there's something else interesting that happens, which is I find when I order an Uber in Chicago and I get a black driver, they have the same skin color. They're of the same race.
Shout out to New Revolution with the
How
follow. I see you, brother.
dress and speak is going to change what my prejudice is. Because if they speak in African American vernacular English, and if they're dressed like a Chicagoan from the South Side, I know I'm going to maybe be in for a bumpy ride. Driving on
might
the
be.
shoulder. That's where we're going.
Might be in the car with, what's that nigga name? Damn, what's that nigga name that, damn, little, fuck, Chief Keef nigga? I forgot his name. Anyways, he might be
But
ducking
if
and
they start
dodging.
speaking in an African accent and they're wearing different clothes, I have a completely different prejudice. And I say, you're probably a student. You're probably the child of a doctor or something on a visa.
Yeah.
And I think that as far
And I can definitely contest to this. Well, agree because my boy is African, and you know they don't play around.
as these kinds of stereotypes
don't
are
play.
concerned, I've always
They don't
thought of
play.
it as economizing on information, which is that you don't know everything about every person that you come into contact with. We make assumptions, generalizations based on a variety of things. And, you know, that speaks to the fact that it's not necessarily the color of that person, but it's kind of like the behavior of their tribe,
Right.
so to speak. And if you see an African American, it's kind of funny. We talk about race, we jump right to if you're walking down an alley at night, and you see you know, but that's naturally we tend to associate race with racism and the sensitivity around race to prejudice. When we see
I hate when they keep
black
saying
people,
African
it's not
American.
their skin
Thank you.
color.
Say black people. Damn.
it's a number of things that indicate you're part of a certain cultural milieu. You're part of a certain tribe. Because I think anybody recognizes that if you see, like I said, a black person from Africa, it's a whole different set of stereotypes and expectations. Even if you see an African American and maybe they just are wearing different clothes, you might say, oh, this is maybe a different sort of a person. And I think that
Or if they're wearing glasses. There was a
shit.
Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where Larry has a black friend and he discovers that if he puts on fake glasses, he can
Fuck,
get
with
into,
the follow, I see you,
any
brother.
room,
Right,
everyone
right.
immediately starts treating him differently. So
yeah, or wearing a backpack or, you know, a
Right,
polo shirt or whatever. And I think that speaks to, I think it elucidates when there's this preoccupation in the country with racism. You have to actually break down what we mean by that. And prejudice is always associated with that, and stereotyping and generalizations. I think at this point, everybody recognizes there's almost nothing wrong with that in itself.
No, because that's how you
There's nothing
survive.
wrong actually with stereotyping by itself. The problem is when
That's what I was
treat
talking about
people
earlier.
unfairly based on that,
Right.
or you don't give people a chance. I
or
think.
somebody breaks the stereotype and you won't let them. You won't
Right.
let them break the stereotype. You know,
Right.
It's like, this person really is remarkable, really is an exception.
Exactly.
And I just refuse to allow for any exceptions.
That's crazy.
Warning. This product.
No, I definitely, that's what I was talking about earlier. Stereotyping saves your life. Being racist saves your life. Cause like Nick and Joe was just joking about, why the fuck would you go down that dark alley with that nigga right in there? Like I'm not even, and that's what I be trying to tell niggas. I don't go anywhere without my shit on me ever. I don't go anywhere without and I have my shit on me every time I go outside. I leave my damn house, I have some shit on me. So why the fuck would I even encourage somebody else to do some dumb shit like that? I would never do no shit like that. I already know. Daquan might be hurting right now. He might do fucking got robbed by the plug and now he might need a quick lick. I already know. He ain't gonna get me though.
Oops. We also have a capacity as individuals.
I'm gonna take the long way
to be independent and to have kind of a unique taste or whatever. So I don't think they're necessarily mutually exclusive in that way. People think it's all or nothing. Either somebody walks into a shop and we're going to say, we're so race blind, I don't even know what color that person is. I have no idea what to expect. Versus, oh, I see a person of a certain color, I know exactly what they're about. I think everyone recognizes there's a position in the middle, which is realistic.
Agreed. So I've come to the point where I tell people I'm not a race essentialist. Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, Judaism, like those things would be more important to me. So religion would trump race. So I'm not a race essentialist. I'm also not a racial determinist. I don't think things change in 15 minutes. But we talked about this offline. But I do think that things can change over time. And so I'm not fatalistic that it's set in the stars that every race will be exactly as it is today for all of time. I think that people can change, albeit slowly. So not a race essentialist, not a race determinist, but I think, race realist is probably the best term that I've heard so far. I think there's some baggage attached, that ways that I would want to distinguish myself, but I think I'm fairly comfortable using that label. And, for myself as a Christian and a pastor, like I always want to be able to account for things biblically, and one of the passages that I think of, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I'm sure you're probably familiar, but in Titus, the very beginning of, Paul's letter to Titus, kind of like Timothy, another young man in the faith, he opens up by saying, "This is why I left you in Crete, the Isle of Crete, to put what remains in order, appointing elders in all the churches." And then he goes in the first chapter into the qualifications for an elder in the church. And then a little later in the letter to Titus, and this is all in the New Testament, Paul, he doesn't actually say it himself, but he's quoting one of the Cretan prophets. He says, "One of your own said, all Cretans are gluttons, liars, and lazy beasts." But then he does say, "And this is true." It's like, based Apostle Paul, so like, but here's the thing, I think you have to hold in tension, to be fair. So the quote from a Cretan prophet is, "Hey, I'm Cretan myself, but let's be honest, Cretans suck, and they suck in particular ways, not just generally, but they're known for these particular things. They're lazy. They're beastly, so maybe low IQ? Impulse control.
Low IQ?
They're impulsive, and they're gluttons,
irrational,
so
emotional,
indulgent, and dishonest. So these kinds of things. And the Apostle Paul validates that and says he nailed it. This is true. Yet, holding in tension at the very same time, the opening to the letters, "This is why I left you in Crete, to put what remains in order, appointing elders in all the churches." And here are the qualifications for being an elder, a pastor, a bishop in the church of Christ. Well, who is Titus going to find to meet these qualifications to appoint as elders in Cretan churches? Cretans. So I take that to mean, like, the Apostle Paul on the one hand is saying, in general, right, which is different than universal, but in general, the Cretans, as a people collectively, are not great. And not just in a general sense, like generally, but not in a vague sense, but in these particular areas, there are particular sins that are besetting and generally true of the Cretan people as a whole, not just this one Cretan as an individual, but no, you could actually describe the Cretans collectively in these negative
Eugene
ways,
with the
and you would be generally right. And yet,
Perfect.
one, because that's general, not universal, there will always be exceptions. And two, because of the power of the gospel, Christ actually changes hearts. I think that there will be some Cretans that will be fit to be ministers. And this is why I left you there, to put that. And I feel like we can do, and I can do that, honestly, I can do it with Europeans. And I wouldn't say historically, I wouldn't say King Alfred is what I'm about to, describe white people. But today, I would say, and I could say all people. And you have to understand the disclaimer. All people, a generalization. Of course, there are exceptions. But in a general sense, I would say all white people are suicidal, toxic empathy, and cowardly. And that's why the West is falling apart. And then I feel like I could also say all black people are impulsive.
Working with different teams can get messy. Here's how a Sonic.
What the fuck are you talking about? Imagine. Imagine.
Perfect.
Don't spike your cortisol, guys. You gotta. That's the one thing I can take from Clav. Don't spike your cortisol. Keep your cortisol low, guys.
List some particular sentence. And again, in general, of course there are exceptions. I'm not thinking of Thomas Sowell, not thinking of Clarence Thomas. And I think I could also, to go one step further, say all Jews are subversive. And, there would, of course, be some exceptions there as well. But the point is, I think the Bible actually has a category for that, all Cretans. So I'm not just being, and I can say those things and not say, and therefore I hate them, or I wish them harm,
Right.
or I would mistreat them as a lower class of, or deprive them of certain rights. But I can still prejudge. I know that among these people, because the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, it's just, race is a tribe, it's an extended family. And I know that this family has these kinds of characteristics, both good and bad. Here are some of the bad ones in particular. And so if this is a black man who's a member of my church and a friend, I'm not thinking about any of that.
Right.
I'm thinking about what I know at the individual level because I individually know him.
Right.
But if it's a perfect stranger and I've never met before, then I'm thinking of, and I do this with white people. I meet a random white person and in 2025, and I'm thinking, this guy's probably a cuck. Cowardly, probably, this, that, and the other. And I have a fairly high statistical chance of being right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I don't think that that's mean. I don't think that's a sin.
No.
But nobody's gonna care that he said that white people are cucked out and they're cowardly and they're they're suicidal. Nobody's gonna care about that. They're only gonna be like, did you hear how he said we were impulsive and lazy? Oh my God.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think that.
Oh my
my favorite
God.
Quote is from Sam Francis. I'm sure you heard me say this, but
Oh my God. He said
I think
people
it was
were
Pat
lazy
Buchanan, actually.
and
He said,
impulsive.
race is not everything, but it isn't nothing.
Yeah.
And I think everyone recognizes that it's at somewhere in between, because it would be ridiculous to say that we can't make any generalizations, because you can make generalizations about anything. You can make generalizations about people from different generations, boomers, millennials, zoomers. Right. You make generalizations about people that live in California. You can make, and yes, that also applies to the races also as a distinct group. And we have layers of identity, as Americans, as people of a certain generation, people of a certain race. And of course, there are certain attitudes that come with that, attitudes, behaviors. And at the same time, you'd recognize it would be ignorant to say that, like you said, applies universally to every single member.
Right.
And that is so vilified then. If you make any generalization, they're saying you're ignorantly applying that to everyone in all cases with no exceptions, and you're doing it in a hateful way, irrationally, because of some base xenophobia. Because
they say it's two things. One, you're dumb and ignorant, but also you're mean and malicious.
It's hateful and pointed.
Right.
Yeah. When It really isn't. I mean, on some level, we have to audit our society if we
Right.
want to make things better for anyone. And every group has their strengths and weaknesses. Every group.
Look, you want to make it to the playoffs. You want to make it to the championships. You get into we get into the meeting room and we talk and we break down film and we say, okay, he scores a lot. He scores efficiently. We need to get him the ball a lot. This is how you start winning. When you start breaking it down like that, he scores. We need to get him. He needs to touch the ball all the time for scoring. Okay, he doesn't get turnovers. He needs to dribble the ball all the time. He needs to be setting everybody else up. Okay, he grabs the most boards. He needs to be starting. This is how you start winning championships. When you start breaking down and see what everybody does and being real and honest about what's going on. That's how you win.
Has their, you know, things that's just how they do these things.
Look, you niggas are,
you know,
gotta
like
relax.
you would say with white people, clearly white people have lots of problems, and you're able to say that very freely. You know, what
Right.
you just said.
Yeah, the first part was easy.
Yes.
The next part, even Nick
Yes.
Fuentes, I noticed you're like,
Well,
what's he going to say?
And what's funny is because what you said will be clipped.
It will
Not
be.
the part where you said whites are cowardly.
Right, I just said
part
that
where you
too.
said blacks are lazy.
That's right.
Why? We all know why. But it's true. You could say that whites have a lot of problems. Blacks obviously have a lot of problems. Jews have problems. Muslims have problems. But we exist also.
But not the same problems, which
Right.
is kind of part of what I was getting at. It wasn't just all Cretans are bad,
Right.
but in these particular ways. And it helps to know.
Right.
It helps to know.
Well, because they're descriptive, they're qualitative. It's not a put down and saying you're bad, you're less than, you're inferior, but it's saying that.
It's a constructive
and
criticism.
I like to use the word sin because I do think that they are kind of like concentrated sins.
They are. Yeah. Particular sins that are sadly generally accurate in describing a particular people.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think it does us any good to ignore those things. But the reason it is the way it is, these like double standards, because that's also where we enter in on the subject of race is
Picked a great name, but your voice
Funky ass commercials.
voice mod gives you over
What the
100
fuck?